Welcome to the Expert's Journey podcast, where we're all about creating your path to impact. Join your hosts, Dixie Mary Carlton from Indie Experts Publishing and Mr. Web Marketing Brad Houck, as we look at how you can grow your business and influence by leveraging your knowledge for profit. Welcome back to the Expert's Journey. Today, are your calls to action working hard enough for your business? In this episode, we're going to dive into creating compelling CTAs that drive traffic for your website, promote your book, and encourage engagement with your materials, worksheets, and resources. So good morning, Dixie.
Hey, good morning, Brad. How are you going today?
I'm doing good. Now, this is a really exciting topic. I like this one because I think our people underestimate what calls to action are and how they work to improve your marketing through everything you do. What do you think of that as a topic?
Oh, look, I'm really excited about this because it's one of my favorite things to do, to talk about with authors, is when you're doing a book, you can't just do a book and expect that everybody's going to do something as a result of having read your book. I'm all in favor of doing things like what I call read your calls to action through the contents of your book. So these are one of my favorite conversations to have. So let's roll into it. I know you've got some great things to share about this as well, Brett.
Excellent. Okay, so a little bit of a definition of a call to action. A call to action is an essential thing for guiding your audience towards a desired action. So turning passive visitors into active participants. Bridge between interest and engagement, whether they're signing up for a newsletter, buying a product, or downloading a resource. Now, that's obviously a description from the web, but the key thing to remember here is that you're taking people from reading your content to actually taking an action. And this is the key thing, because if you don't ask people to do things, they don't. It's pretty simple. You can have the best content in the world, but if you don't ask someone to buy your book or buy your course or whatever it happens to be, they won't. They just don't. It's funny. Psychology is a weird thing.
Well, I remember years ago training as a salesperson. And one of the big things that kept coming up in sales training we did was, if you don't ask for the order or ask for the sale, the buyer is sitting there wondering what to do next. And so you have to know you have something to sell, that you have something to upsell, and then you've got to know how to ask people to take action. You know, offer it in such a way that yes is the only answer. They feel compelled to say, yeah, I want more of that. So everything is leading into a sale, essentially, without it feeling like you're doing a hard sell. Because most people don't like to do that.
Yeah, look, you don't have to do a hard sell to sell. But you do need to ask people to take action. And I mean, on a web page, it can be as simple as having a buy now button or click here to join or something like that, And, people underestimate the value of having those buttons clearly marked or those links clearly marked. I know, for example, having a button in the top right-hand corner of your website up in the top bar that says book an appointment is one of the most effective places to get people to book an appointment with you. It sounds stupid, but because it's there, it's so visible, and you bring your mouse in from that side, that people do take advantage of that button. But yet most websites don't have that. They'll have it on the contact page or something. And I know from working with clients on their websites, this absolutely makes a difference. So that call to action, it just works. People's eyes, go for it.
Well, one of the things that we've talked about already in previous episodes is the fact that you need to know who your target market is. And you need to know then what you want to have happen as a result of them reading your book or attending your seminar or workshop or seeing you speak. So you've got to know who they are. And then once you know that, and you've got this whole concept of starting with the end in mind, not what it is that you want to have happen as a result of them finishing reading your book or attending your event, it's relatively easy. And most people don't get that. It's so easy to say, well, I've thought about who you are. I've thought about what you're going to want. And now I've got the solution for you. So here you go. It really is.
Absolutely. And that key point you made then of having the end in mind is so important. I often see people and they're like, okay, I'm writing a book or I'm building a website or whatever. And it's like, yeah, but why? Why are you doing that? What's the long-term goal of this? Okay, the book gives you credibility. It gives you all these different things, but where's that going to lead? Where do you want it to go? Is it going to lead to speaking engagements? Is it going to bring people to your website to read your content? Do you want them to buy something? So thinking about this end goal, keeping this end goal in mind is really important, because that's where you talk about, putting the calls to action through a book to, pull people towards an action is so important. And it applies, to a web page. It applies to everything, sales copy, the whole lot. I think people lose sight of that the end point is so, so important when it comes to marketing yourself.
It's a matter of who do you want to work with? How do you want to work with them? But as Simon Sinek says in his great books, with why gives you the whole concept of then, well, how are you going to make that happen? And what is it that's going to be happening as a result of that? Again, it's a 1, 2, 3 simplicity. But most people think of it as being, it's too hard. Or, oh, if I'm going to do a call to action, then I've got to create this so that people can download that. Or I've got to think through creating my whole workshop before I can put a link to something. No, you've simply got to go one step at a time and say, right, while I'm writing the book, as I'm going through the book, I'm going to remind people to click through to this page or go to this page, which will then take them to a landing page, which will then have, you can do this, this, or this. You can download something, you can see some more information, or you can make contact or book an appointment. You can, again, just keep it really simple right from the start. And don't put so much pressure on yourself that it becomes such a hard thing to do that you lose track of what it is that you have to do, or you lose momentum and enthusiasm because you think, oh, but that's a whole other big part of the project. It doesn't have to be enormous. It just has to be a way of bringing them in.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing is you get caught up in the, I've got to do this and then I've got to do that and then I've got all this stuff to do. And it's like, all I want to do is, capture these people realistically. So, the easiest way, obviously, to do that is instead of like having to, extrapolate it out at the start is, just put an email capture form there and give, people a free download. And then you can come back to them with all these other things later because you've captured them. So people often get caught up in that, if I got to write this, but then I got to write that before I can actually launch this. Well, no, that's not the case. But look, I've got some stats that I'll run through because I think they're really, really interesting. And I don't think people understand this. And these are from a range of websites like HubSpot, Unbounce, CoSchedule, WordStream. And I think it really shows the power of having calls to action. So first one, emails with a single clear call to action can increase click-through rates by 371% and sales by 161%.
Wow.
That's just a clear call to action in an email. CTAs on landing pages increase conversions by 80% when they are clear and action-orientated. And when they say action-orientated, it's like click here to join. Tells you to do an action. Adding CTA buttons to your website or materials instead of plain text improves conversion rates by up to 45%.
Wow.
These are big numbers, in this case. Including a CTA in blog posts can increase lead generation by up to 20. So, one of the things we talk about is putting in like an inline form or, sign up for my newsletter in between the paragraphs on a blog post, for example. We know that works really, really well. And look, I've got a pile of others.
Checking in with that.
I mean, that's enough.
Yeah. But, and you're right. There are, statistics and damn lies as well as a favorite saying from within many media. But the reality is that if you have a call to action, people are going to take action. But danger that people put a call to action in for the sake of putting a call to action and it's so rubbishy or it's so blasé that in actual fact, there is no real cut through and then people just get turned off by whatever you're offering. Like how much do you think you have to really put into, we just said, look, let's keep it simple. But in reality, how much do you really think we have to put into thinking and doing to make a call to action work? What are some great things that you would do as a call to action that is simple?
I think the key thing is that the call to action should lead to value for the person who clicks it. That's probably the key thing here. If they click this thing and they do whatever it is you want to do, whether it's to follow you on social media, to sign up for an email newsletter, which I honestly signing up to, get something is absolutely the best thing you can do because once you have people's email addresses, you're outside of the control of platforms like Facebook and all that. You can contact them directly. So that's like a key marketing thing as far as I'm concerned. There's that old saying, the money's in the list. But whatever it is, you need to give people value for that. And so the simplest way is to offer a download of some sort that gives them something that they can do straight away, which will improve their business or their life. And that's not all that hard to do. And I mean, it just takes them to a page with a video and a worksheet. They watch the video and they do the worksheet. That is extremely successful. And I've seen many marketers and business people online using that method to great success. The second one, of course, is, to send out a newsletter. I know so many people that have exceptional newsletters, but look, that does take work on an ongoing basis. I certainly wouldn't be starting with a weekly newsletter. I'd be looking at a monthly one because it is a lot of work. I used to work for associateprograms.com, and we used to send out a newsletter every week. And that newsletter required an article of around 1,000 words a week. And that was a lot of work to get it out and to review certain software. And there was certain things that went into that newsletter every week. But surprisingly, that newsletter brought a lot of money back to that business because it brought traffic back to look at the programs and to sign up for them, which you picked up a commission. So yeah, you really need something simple that adds a lot of value that is going to appeal to your specific target audience and take them on that next step of the journey with you.
Which again comes back to the whole concept of start with the end in mind. So when you are mapping out your book or your presentation or your workshop, you need to be thinking about all of that as an end result right at the beginning.
Oh, absolutely. And if we get into the more practical side of this, if we look at, what are the rules of, call to action? The first one is be clear and direct. So when you're putting buttons or, places for people to click, make sure that you use actionable language. So you're looking like download now, get started, learn more, click here to join. These are super important. People often put kind of abstract words like join or book or something. Use a couple more words. It's free on the internet to add more words. You don't have to pay any extra for it. But, speak to the person. Tell them what you want them to do.
Yeah. That goes back to what we were talking about in last week's session, or it might have been the week before, where, if you know the avatar of who you're trying to attract, it becomes easier to figure out what they might respond to, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. But even just being, simple language, telling people exactly what you want them to do is better than so many of the calls to action that I see on people's websites when I review them and help them with their marketing and stuff. And I'm constantly amazed by the number of people that just never even ask people to do something. They just have a web page and they have all this great information. But at the bottom of the page, it's not like call us on 1300 or click here to book an appointment. It's a simple sentence, like it's not even a button, but they don't even put it in.
So here's my challenge to us as a part of this particular podcast episode is that we develop a rules of engagement for calls to action and make that a download for anyone who emails and says, I really want that, or goes to either of our websites and just says, hey, I really want that calls to action rules of engagement. And we just do a quick downloadable resource for that, because what you've been talking about and the things that we've both just touched on are really valuable. But if people don't actually take some action from just listening to these kind of web podcasts, then it becomes very, listening by default rather than listen, learn and do something. So let's take our own good advice and do that. Are you up for that challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I'll do is I'll just create a page on mrwebmarketing.com, probably call it downloads. So mrwebmarketing.com/downloads. There we go. True. I'll put it on there and I can always link to you as well. If they want to come over to you, and we'll start to put some of these things up for people to use because you're absolutely right. And podcasting is a great medium, but it is passive. We are listening and often exercising. I know I am when I'm listening to them. But, having a checklist that people can use would be great. So I'm more than happy to put that together. So
the other thing I was going to say was that we touched on this very lightly a few minutes ago, where there is always so much to do. There is always more stuff to learn, more stuff to do. It does take it out of you. And I think we beat ourselves up a little bit sometimes when we will take action on someone's call to action and then it sits there. And I know I found myself guilty of that this week. I signed up for something. I paid some money even for this particular thing. I did the call to action and then I let it sit there untouched after I did the download for about 2 weeks before I thought, I paid some money for that. I should do something with it. And I realized that I do that a lot. And I don't know if many other people can relate to this. I'm sure they can, where you get carried away. You think, great call to action. I'm going to click on that. and then you still do nothing. I think
Yeah.
this brings us to a really important point, that if you do a call to action and you give something away for people to or do, and they're giving you their email address or a form of being able to remarket to them, if we, the producers of content, don't take a minute, a fortnight or so, to just follow up on everyone and say, hey, did you like that download? Did you read that? Did you want to pass comments? Did you want to do something? Because this is actually taking the whole concept of a call to action to a whole other level. Because I'm sure there are statistics that go back to that touch point concept, that if you download, if you have a call to action that's successful, you are still going to increase your numbers further in terms of engagement by actually having a system for them following that up. I think that's something that I find we don't always do regularly.
Like that, where, you're giving people something and, that's there to help them. They've taken the action. You really need to look at each one and create an email automation that goes with that. And that might be 4 or 5 follow-up emails. So there might be one that comes out straight away with a link to the thing that they need to download. And then a couple of days later, another one saying, hey, I hope you got started. Just in case you got stuck, here's some tips. And then, 7 days later, 15 days later, or whatever you want to do, you can do your timing however you want. But the point is, that follow-up to help them actually do it and to remind them to go and get it, because sometimes you'll see something, you click it, you download it, and then life gets in the road. As you said, 2 weeks goes past. Those little reminder emails are part of that call to action system. And I think, you make a really good point that most people kind of get the first part, but the second part requires extra work. But, my tip is there is a whole pile of email sequences that if you do a search online, follow-up email sequences, you can find those. I mean, even the Story Brand book, for example, has a whole series of really good follow-up emails already written. You just got to customize them.
Yeah.
So,
is that Miller's book?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, the original one, Building a Story Brand. Yeah. So, you can get that stuff without having to write it. You just got to kind of adjust it to suit yourself.
Well, and that's the other thing. Like, there are programs that enable you to do this so that you set it up and you only have to do it once and then put it in action. Like, I do a lot with MailChimp for that, for clients, where you get them to sign up, you give them the email that's got the download, and then quite simply, a few days later, hey, did you get it? Did you love it? What did you love? Do you want to share that? Do you want to, comment on that? And by the way, here's another part to that, and then another week after that. And these are all just automated. And programs like MailChimp and all of the various other ones make it so easy to set it up. And it's like spinning plates. And we've talked about that before. You set it up, you spin the plate and you keep it spinning, and then you move on to the next plate. Then you've got multiple angles to make it all work for yourself.
Exactly. And that's the point. It continues to work without you having to do anything. And that's a key element of it. But, as we said, the call to action is the first step. You've got to get the call to action right. You've got to get people to, to move towards it. But so moving on to another point, I've got down here that you can focus on the benefit that highlights what the user will gain if they click the button. So it might be boost your productivity with our free worksheet. Now, pretty simple, but it clearly states what the benefit is. And so, you might go for the simple one, click here to join us on our webinar. But this one might be, boost your productivity by joining our webinar. You can mix those things together. So the old thing, we don't sell features, we sell benefits is absolutely essential to remember, and also a part of call to action. So you can take your basic ones, but you can make them even better.
There's a really interesting thing that you can do now too, which is using quizzes and using a quiz to then automate a report. Looks like it's going back as being a mostly personalized report. If you set it up in such a way that there may be 3 various levels of response, and that the report deals with whether you are a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, for example, then your quizzes can actually help people to understand, well, now then I've done this, I've got an understanding of where I'm at, and now I can see what I need to use consultant or that writer, that person for. And you can sell the concept of doing a quiz from the stage or from a pages. You can use quizzes really effectively to build that list and to make people feel like they're getting something great, some really good insights into their own situation by just setting up a quiz. and inviting
Yeah,
people
the
to
call to
listen.
action there being that, here's an opportunity to learn about something about yourself. And I've literally just done this for leadership, and I did one for personal leadership and one for business leaders. And I created it. I worked with AI and I worked with a range of tools, but it's done in such a way that, if you answer, A, B, C, or D, it's weighted, so many points for A, so many points for B sort of thing. And then at the end, it totals all those up and it will give you a rating for each section. And then it says, if you're between this and this, then do this. If you're between, and it's really not that hard. I mean, it took me a while to find some software. So I ended up finding Form NX, which actually allowed me to kind of do all that and to do all the additions within the forms and all that. But yeah, look, it is a great way to do it. The one thing I would say, and you see this used a lot on Instagram and Facebook advertising, where they have the, do you want to lose weight now? Just answer some simple questions and go in there. And next thing you're 15 minutes into doing this quiz.
Yeah.
And then you get to the end and they're like, now pay $10 for the full report. And it's like, hey, mate, no, you made out this was free and now you want me to pay. So please, if you go down the route of quizzes, be ethical about it. If you're going to ask people questions and you don't say up front that I'm, offering you a paid report, then don't do it. That's unethical as far as I'm concerned. I know it's marketing, but I just think it's bad. It looks bad. Give them the free report. And if they want an in-depth one, they can pay extra. So someone who does that is the Fascination Report. Yeah. One of the speakers in the States does that one. You get a basic report. And if you want an in-depth report, you can pay extra to get the full in-depth report. That's fair enough. But yeah, don't use it as what would you call it? A bait and switch almost.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. And I also hate them. And I think it's one of those things where if you are truly an expert in your field and you know your material, being worried that you're giving away too much and giving them a report that's a relatively basic one is just rubbish, because you know, if you give away a reasonable amount of good quality information that hasn't taken a lot to set up, but it's good quality information for the person receiving it, your call to action, then you actually do more for yourself by engaging them further and having them believe that this is the tip of the iceberg. You can go deeper. You can share more, that it's in their, it's worthwhile them hanging around for longer to actually be part of whatever else you have. So I think that there's this whole concept of generosity that we have to adopt in order to make our calls to action really good quality calls to action and viable for people to then get excited about them and to follow us as a result of stepping into that call to action.
Absolutely. And that comes back to that value thing again. It's all about value. And you're right. You can never give away enough stuff, especially if you're someone that works with people or works with businesses to educate them and improve them and things like that, because you could never give away everything that's going on in your head. And also when you're working directly with someone, they're telling you stuff. And so it changes the application of that information so that you're getting an entirely different answer. Even though it's based on the same principles, it's different because it's specific to that person. So, or whatever it happens to be. So I've always believed that you can never give away enough to make your business grow.
And that, I think, is the difference between the concept of being free versus cheap. If you give away something for free that is of good value and you know that there's going to be this reciprocity potentially in that, versus appearing to be cheap-minded or non-generous in spirit, because you're just giving something away just to maybe just tip the scales and getting someone to say yes, and then they regret it because they feel that they've been, still ripped off even if it was cheap. That's a big difference. And credibility is built on having good quality, transparent generosity, and making it count. You've got stuff to share. They're going to get value from it. And you've already targeted your market correctly to make sure that you are targeting them well, know who they are, you know how they're going to respond because you've done your whole target market conceptualizing. And then you've got value exchanging between you. So
exactly. And look, if you're listening to this and you've got problems with giving things away for free, go and get the book Free by Chris Anderson. It is the best book on this subject. It will change your mind about free. And we're not saying give away your, private intelligence or your good stuff, but you're giving away a lot of great stuff, and that's fine. because as I said, every situation when you're working with someone directly or you're working with their business directly is different. So the stuff you're giving away is a generic sort of content. So, understand that free is super, super powerful, but, bringing us back to our topic of calls to action, it all starts with asking someone to actually do something before, you can kind of launch into that. So, getting your calls to action on your pages, getting your calls to actions in your books and your worksheets and all those other places is just so important. And so, as a marketer, I encourage everybody, go and look at your website, go and look at the stuff you're putting out and go, am I asking someone to do something here or am I just leaving it hanging?
Absolutely. That's a good place to leave it for today. I think we've covered a lot of really interesting ground. And I want to remind people to go onto your website, Mr. Webmarketer, find the downloads/experts journey and get some of these checklists about some of these things that we've just been talking about in relation to calls to action.
Absolutely. And I'll try and put a link in our podcast description as well so that people can get that. So we hope you've learned something today. And if you have, please like the podcast, share the podcast and subscribe. Don't forget you can watch us on YouTube if you really want to see us do our thing. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of The Expert's Journey.
Thanks, Brad. It's been a pleasure.